All right, friends. It is not week 6, it's week 7. Sorry, I'm building off of last week's. Week 7 lecture. As always, you have your discussion questions and core assignments. You guys should have gotten a full, sort of an official check-in yesterday. I think both of you guys are crushing it, so way to go. I think you guys were both above the 90%. So you should have gotten that. If you didn't, let me know. But again, you guys are both good. But please make sure you are just using you're doing your discussion questions. They should all be open up until like week 13. So if you wanted to move ahead, you can. I just can't go faster because there's another Python stack. That if I do that, then it screws up their entire stuff too. So I have to sort of slowly go with that. And then your core assignments this week, let's look at this. You've got a core assignment called Counter. And Dojo survey. So today we're going to be talking about something called session in Flask and handling forms and how we're going to take in information from a form and how we're going to handle that. And then you have, again, those two core assignments, Dojo survey and Counter. Again, what I would say is if you finish these ahead of time, get started on Ninja Gold. This is the hardest assignment within our class. So get started with that just to make sure that you guys have it all, that you have plenty of time to do that because it's a tough one. It's pretty tough. So cool. Awesome. So let's jump in. What we talked about last week, just as a little bit of a recap, is we introduced Flask, right? So we kind of kicked rocks to MySQL. We're not going to really be dealing with that until we start building databases and combining the two, which is not next week, but the week after. But now we're introducing Flask again, and we created an environment. We talked about virtual environments, how they're basically backpacks for our project. We have to make sure we're navigating to our terminal or within our terminal or command prompt or whatever you use to the folder structure before we activate the environment. And then what we do is we have a couple different files. We've got this server py file that's got some different aspects with it up here. After we create our environment, we have to bring in Flask. So we pip env install Flask. And then once we do that, we can have this line here that says import Flask and render template from that Flask dependency that we created. Now, if you see this yellow squiggly, all this is saying is that your environment on VS Code doesn't have Flask, but it's okay. You can just sort of ignore it as long as you know that your environment, wherever your terminal is running and it has Flask, then it's okay. It's still going to work just fine. So if you get that yellow squiggly, that's what that is. And we also have this app equals Flask Dunder name. And what that is doing is that is actually creating up and spinning up our server. Then we have this if Dunder name equals main, and this is actually running it. So this is setting up our application and this is spinning it up and running it. Now, again, because I'm on a Mac, I have to put this port equals 5001. If you're on a Windows, you don't even have to put that. And by default, it'll be 5000. But because I'm on a Mac, I need to go ahead and do that. Can anybody remember what is this called? I put this above this method. I don't remember what this is called other than my route.
The
It's called a,
decorator?
yeah, decorator.
Decorator.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to come in handy. We're going to learn about decorators when we start dealing with models, because there's going to be different methods that we're going to handle. But just know that right now, this is just a decorator, right? This guy right here that allows us to say, okay, when it goes to this route, here's what I want it to do. What's really important is understanding the flow and the logic of this application. The way that it was put to me, and that made a lot of sense, is that all software development is moving data from one place to another. And so constantly I'm going to be going through and saying, okay, we're going to take it here, then it goes to here, then it goes to here to show you what the computer's doing. The reason that's going to be really important is we want to make sure that we understand how, kind of the order of operations. So that way, if we get a bug or if we have an issue, we know kind of where to look, right? We go, okay, well, I know it's getting to this route and the next step is here. So it's getting to the route, that's good, but it's stopping. Therefore, the error must be here, right? And so kind of breaking that down. So what happens is when our server spun up, when we go here, which is localhost 5001, what happens is it comes to this file and it tries to look for the route. In this case, it's just a slash. But if it was like an about or a user something name, it's going to look for that route. And it says, are you the route I'm looking for? Are you the route I'm looking for? Are you the route I'm looking for? And it does that until it finds the route that we're looking for, right? And so in this case, this first one, it's going to find it the first one. But if it was about, right? If it was localhost 5000 / about, or 5001, sorry, / about, it's going to say, are you about? Nope. Are you about? Yes. Okay, cool. Let's go to this about and handle that. What happens is once it finds its route, then it goes and runs this method. It says, okay, I'm going to do whatever is in here. It runs this index, and whatever is in that method is what it does. In this case, all we're doing is returning a render template saying, okay, once this method runs, all I want you to give back to my user is this template of index.html. So it goes here and it gives this back to my user. Now, I just want to kind of put this because I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it'll help. Is just as a reminder, this is what we call the request response cycle, right? Where my user is requesting something or my client is requesting something from my server. My server is there in the green. My client is there in the blue. And then my server does whatever it needs to do. So in this case, it goes to my server PY, finds the route, says, what do you want me to give? I have this requested this route. What do you want me to give it back? And we say, okay, give it back this template. And it goes, okay, got it. And it takes that template back. And then my client sees that, right? That's what it renders and it shows. And so that's the request response cycle that's happening throughout this. Are there any questions just at the basis of this Flask application?
No, I had to draw it out of my notebook.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes
To remind me
visualizing it
just
makes
so,
it a little bit
yeah.
easier. Yeah. And this happens all the time, right? Anytime we do a route, it takes, 5001 / about, that's a request. Okay. What do I do when they do that? Oh, yep. All right, here we go. Boom. / user / name. Okay. What do you want me to do? Okay. It bundles it up and it gives a response back. So that's what's happening there. Okay. So what we're doing today is we are talking about forms and session. Now, session is something you could think about. It is something that it's a tool or a cookie that we can use to kind of keep track of information. Think about Facebook, right? When you log into Facebook, you only have to log in one time, right? And then, or maybe each time you go on a browser, it might have a login, whatever. But you log in, and every time you navigate, whether you click on your profile, then you click on maybe your friends, and then you go to Marketplace, every time you're navigating, right? You don't have to log in each time. It doesn't have to constantly check and say, well, is this even, who is this? Is this Kevin? Is this Jeffrey? Is this Estrella? Like, who is doing that? You only log in once. And the way that happens is once you log in, it attaches a cookie. And so that's your sort of validation. So each time it goes, it says, okay, I know who this is, and I know how to keep track of that information. Session is going to operate like that for us. Now, there are other tools, there are cookies, there are web tokens that are a little bit more advanced that might be used, but I want you to understand session first, so that way we can really have an understanding there and really kind of make sure that we are, that you have to understand session, and we're going to use that quite a bit there. Cool. So just looking at this, when we're looking with this post form submission, first and foremost, I kind of want to talk about this and then we'll get into session and kind of handling this is when we are getting data from a user, we are mostly always getting it from a form, right? A form is the way that we always get information from our users. So I'm going to go create a form. In here, I'm going to use something called Bootstrap. We've talked about it. I believe we talked about it. And
Yes,
what it
you
does
did.
is yeah, perfect. Thank you. I couldn't remember if it was this class or the other class. Is this allows me to just kind of use that built-in CSS that Bootstrap has already created. So I'm going to use that. It's much easier. And then, as I feel free to use it as well. But you'll kind of get used to it. So I'm going to, actually, let me just delete that because I'm going to say dot container. When I say dot, again, that is just a shortcut to create a div with a class of container. I could say p dot container. I could say h1 dot container, whatever element I want. That'll give me a class. Vice versa, if I say, hashtag or pound sign container, it's going to create an ID of container. So just a quick little thing for you. That's why that dot worked. So what I want to do is I want to create a form. Now, when we are dealing with receiving information, there's different types of requests that we can have, right? That our server can manage and see. We're going to have a whole bunch whenever we're dealing with CRUD. We're going to have get, we're going to have post, we're going to have patch / put, or we're going to have delete, right? And so one thing to kind of ingrain into your brain is there's really two main ones that you're going to deal with. I guess I should say you'll deal with all four, but the two ones that you really need to focus on are get and post for right now. We'll get to update and delete or patch, put, and delete later. But just know that get really is just a getting. It's like a read only, right? I just want to retrieve information. So when we're making a request and I'm just saying, hey, I want to retrieve information, that's a get request, right? I just need to get something. Post request is, hey, I want to give you some information. I want to give you information about my user, about, my movie, whatever we're doing. I just want to give you that information. So when we're creating a form, it is always a post request. You're getting information from our user, and then we are giving it to our server to do something with it, to put it in our database, to authenticate, to do something. So our form is a post method. And you can see that here. Now, I'm going to say, I'm going to have a couple different things. And I'm just going to take this right here. Here, because I'm using Bootstrap, I say form group. This is just a styling for this form. Label is name, input type text. So we can type it in, and then form control. Again, that's a Bootstrap thing. And then ID and name. Now, these are really important, this name portion, and we'll see why here in just a second. But what we're going to do is we have this form, we have email and message, same thing. It sort of just has a form group, form control, email, message. Now, when we get that information, there's a couple things that we need to do. First and foremost, I need to say, where are we sending this information? Now, if you notice here in this action that it looks very similar to our decorators, right? And so maybe I'm going to have an app route. And I'm just going to call this /users. Do I have a users? I just have user. I'm going to say new user. Cool. Now, because this is a post request, I also am going to put methods equals post. Now, does this have to be all caps? No, but that is sort of industry standard. And so we do that. But just as a really want to nail this in, anytime we are getting a post request, you have got to do this. If not, you're going to get an error that says, hey, HTTP method doesn't work, right? It got a post request expecting get or something like that. So you always want to make sure that anytime you have something that you're receiving information from a form from a form, then you want to put the method here. And so now, what I can do is I can create a new user. So I'm going to say def new user. Cool. Now I don't want to return new user page yet. What I want to do is I want to actually grab that information, right? I want to grab that information. And so what I want to do, if we look at our platform here, we handle our action attribute, we handle all these different attributes, but I want to first just see, what do I get when I say request.form? Now, when you get that request response cycle, right? When we talked about that, when you have a request, there's a whole bunch of information that you can get, or that it gives it. Whenever it's making a request to your server, there's a whole bunch of information that is kind of bundled up within that request. First and foremost, let's just even print request. Just print request, and let's see if that allows it. Now, before I even do this, I want to say there's another thing that we're always going to do, and this is you need to make sure you hammer this down as well. Anytime we have a post request, we never render template. We always redirect. Always, always, always redirect. Now, squiggly line doesn't know what redirect is. We need to bring that in up here. Cool. And bring in request. Cool. The reason we never redirect is if you return, or if I refresh, right? Let's say I have my form and I submit it and I refresh, it's going to give another submission, right? If we render template, maybe back to the same thing or something, it's going to continue doing that. And if we have maybe a credit card or something that we're putting on file, or we're doing something with, if I continually do that, it's going to act as new charges. And so you never, ever, ever, it's just a good rule of thumb, never render template on a post request, always redirect. In this case, we're just going to redirect back home. That's fine. But let's see what happens. Let's go ahead and open up my terminal. New terminal. I'm going to say pip env shell. Cool. I got this. Now let's say Python 3 server.py. Cool. So here, if I go to localhost 5001, you see that I just have this form. Kind of looks ugly. That's okay. We'll figure it out. Figure it out here in a second. But if I say will w@c.com and then hello world, and I submit, let's see what happened here. The method is not allowed for the requested URL. I didn't do anything, right? And so this is the error that you'll see if you forget to do that methods. I think what it did is it defaulted to the slash. So I need to say slash new user. So I think it defaulted to our first one. So let's go back, refresh, say will w@c.com, hello world, ORLD. And before I do that, I just kind of want to look. Nope. We could see that we did a post request to slash, right? That's what it did. And it was in red. We got our error, and that's because we tried to do this, but we did not have a methods post. It's also because I accidentally didn't put new user, but it's great because you got to see the error, right? You got to see what happens if you forget that methods post. It says, hey, it's not allowed. But now we know we're good. I can submit. Okay. So nothing happened there. But if I come here, we here have this. This was my request, right? Now, within my request, it's a whole bunch of stuff, but I could say request.form. Request.form. And what that allowed me to do is get the information from, well, I'm going to say w@c.com, hello world. It'll get that information from here. It gives me this immutable multi-dictionary, but it gives me a tuple of name, will, email, w@c.com, message, hello world. Now, something that's really important is this name here is associated to this name here. email is associated to the name of my input. It's really important that you remember what these are. And whenever you're problem solving this, I can guarantee you'll run into this error. That's okay. Everybody does. But if you're trying to handle or get some information, then it can be really confusing, but you want to make sure that this matches whatever we're calling on the other end. What do I mean by that? Well, instead of just printing request.form, what if we actually did something, right? So I could say new user equals, and what if I created an object or a dictionary that said name and message. Just like this, right? I had that tuple, that information where I can go in and say, hey, I can go into my request.form and where it is name, give me that information. In this case, it's Will. Where it's email, give me that information. And where it's message, give me that information. So then I can print new user. And let's see what happens. Refresh. And I submit. I go back to my terminal. And now I get this object or this dictionary, also known as an object, this dictionary of name, Will, email, W@C Calhoun, message, hello world. What I was talking about is if you forget this, and maybe I called this, you know, F name, but in my, and I say F name, but here I call this first name. What it's going to do is it's not going to know, let's even test it out, but it's not going to know, you know, F name is not the same as first name, right? And so it's going to get confused and be like, I don't know what that is. We're going to have an error there. And so that's why it's really important to make sure that in this case, we'll call it first name. I'd like that better. You can call this whatever you want. You're creating these keys, right? This is just a key value pair. These can be called anything on the left. Unicorn, cupcake, rainbow, doesn't matter. What's on the right is we have to say, okay, what is the input's name where I want to grab the information? And they have to match. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, it does, Will.
Cool. Cool. Great. Awesome. So we've kind of talked about all of that fun stuff. Now, when we're dealing with, again, there's a whole thing on redirecting here, so feel free to read that. That's kind of what we talked about. We never, ever, ever render template. But I want to talk about session. And session is a tool that allows us to keep information persistent. So this is fine, right? We had this information, we were able to print it out here, but what if I wanted to have maybe a list of users, right? And I wanted to be able to show that information. Well, I can't do that right now because all I'm doing is printing my new user, but even that, I'm creating a new user, and once this redirects, that information's gone, right? I can no longer use it. I can't do anything with it, which doesn't make sense if we're a company. If I'm Facebook and I want to create, you know, a bunch of users or something, I want to be able to have and keep track because information is like gold. So there's a whole bunch of stuff on here about what is session. I would encourage you to dive into that. Really, all that it is it allows us to keep data persistent throughout different redirects, throughout kind of as long as we need it to be. And the way that we do it is very, very simple. Is at the top, we bring in session. And just know that in order for me to use request.form, I also did need to bring in request. I know that we talked about it, but just wanted to show you that. It's as easy as this. I bring in session. But because session is a cookie, it requires that we give our app a secret key. All that means is that it's just a string. For right now, you don't need to keep it as secret. It's not, you can literally just do whatever you wanted. But when we're up here, we just put this app.secret key. It won't work if you don't put that. But yeah, here is this secret key. You say app.secret key, and this allows us to use session. Cool. Now that we've done that, I can create a thing of session and sort of keep track of that, right? So what I want to do is, let's see, how advanced do I want to go here? Let's say, yeah, let's just kind of follow this. I want to make sure that we are good to go. What session is it is just a dictionary, right? Where I can create keys and I can keep some information. So what I can say is session and then username. So that is what I'm going to refer to it as, equals request.form name. So in this case, instead of just doing that, what I can do is I can say something like this: session new user equals new user. Every time this is going to redo our new user. And if I wanted to add, I can append, I can deal with that. But for right now, that's okay. Let's go ahead and handle this. Let's say that I have this, right? I've got this session right here, this key of new user, and that is equal to my new user dictionary, right? Well, then what I can do is I can take that information and pass it on to my HTML. So what I can say is new user equals session get new user. No, I don't think it's get though. I think I just say session new user. Sorry. ChatGPT did it correct? Incorrect? Cool. And then that. Cool. Now what this is going to do is say, okay, great. Let's follow this real fast. When we come here, it's going to render our index.html. If there's nothing in session, then okay, that's fine. Once we create our form and we send this information, then what it's going to do is it's going to say session equals, or session of new user equals new user. Here we have, well, I don't want to, let me do this. I don't want to confuse you guys actually. Let's just create a new web page. So I'm going to say app user. I don't think I have that. I just have username. Perfect. Perfect. And then we're going to do this to user. Okay. So once we do this, once we create our form, we have our form, once we submit it, it's going to take in that information, create this new object or this new dictionary. Object and dictionary are the same thing. Object is just what it's called in JavaScript. So sorry, I keep saying object. They're the same thing though. It's going to create that new user dictionary, put it in session. Then it's going to redirect to our user route so we can actually show that information that we just saved. We're saying def user, return render template, user HTML. We don't have that yet. And then we're saying I want this HTML to have access to my new user. And the key word we're going to use is user. So I'll show you what that means here in a second. We go to my templates and I say user.html. Perfect. Exclamation point. I come in and I say Control B, Alt Z, save this. Dot container. And then if I just want to maybe have an H1, or it says this, welcome name, we want to show their email and then their message. So again, the flow is they go to the form, they go to our form, we fill this out, we submit it. Once it's submitted, it takes that information to this route here. It creates a new user. Then once it does that, it puts it in session. meaning that we now have access to it, right? The data only lives within this method if we don't put it in session. And then once it redirects, it's done and never, we can't get it back again. This allows us to then be able to retrieve that information somewhere else. Well, where are we taking it? We're redirecting to user, which comes here, and all we're doing is rendering template, HTML, and then we're saying, hey, we want to be able to get that information, or I want to be able to reference it. So we pass in this parameter of user. This can be anything. It could be unicorn, cupcake, rainbow, doesn't matter. This right here is just our new user. Then what it does is says, okay, great, goes to my user HTML. And within this, we refer to this keyword. We do it in, this is called Jinja. And so we have this double curlies that allows us to then inject Flask or Python code within my HTML. And this word right here on the left must match whatever we put right here. So if I called this unicorn, then in here, I would say unicorn.firstname, unicorn.email, unicorn.message. So let's test it out. My server died. Let's run it again.
You're fast.
Thanks. Let's comment this out. And then maybe this. I'm thinking it's not like in this user.
Hey, Will, I have a really quick question. How do you comment all that stuff out at once so quick?
Yeah, so I highlight it and then I do so you can do, if you're on Windows, it's control and then the question mark or the slash, or maybe the Windows and the slash, and then on Mac it's command and then the slash question mark. That'll do it.
So okay, so highlight, control and slash.
Control and
Okay.
slash, or the Windows sign slash. It's a little confusing because I'm on a Windows keyboard on my Mac computer. So mine is the Windows and the question mark, but for Mac, it's the command and question mark. So it's something, it's one of those combinations. Okay, so let's try this. Now, there we go. I refresh and I say will w@c.com, hello world. And whenever I submit it, I get welcome. Oh, so it didn't get my first name, but it got my email and my password. And so that tells me that there's an issue here. In my HTML, anybody see my error before I just tell it?
I do.
What is it, Jeffrey?
You see there's F name and the other one says first name.
Which other one? This one or this one?
Oh no, is it index HTML? Let me see. Yeah, index HTML. I see wait. Oh no, go to user HTML. I'm sorry. Okay, here it's correct. Let's go to index, please. I had seen somewhere like you had said F name and then you said first name. Yeah, right there. Yes. New user, F name, then request form, first dash name.
Yeah. So this, great point out, great catch. What's happening is this is grabbing this information and it's saving it, right? We saw that because we've tested it. The issue is I created a dictionary with a key of F name. But here, and I passed it through here, right? So this is just receiving that dictionary. This would be the same thing as if I said, this, I'm passing in, let me just show you just to understand, right? Because I put it in session, it's the same as saying this, right? New user equals. But notice, because that's what's going in session, right? This is fname. If I want to talk or get that information, I have to put it here. I have to say fname, just like that. So that's the error. So if I come back and I refresh, I get well, right? I was just calling the wrong key within that. Now, this is a great example of it makes your life a million times easier if you're just consistent with your naming conventions, just transparently. Just call it first name. If you're going to call it first name everywhere. Don't put fname on some places and first name in another, because then exactly what just happened will happen. Now this is an error because what's in session is fname. So now if I go back and I say, Charlie, my dog, you got a haircut today. You look super cute.
Oh,
Here I get welcome Charlie, c@c.com. Hello wolf. Can't say world. Terrible with his R's. But anywhere I go, thank you, thank you, thank you. Anywhere I go now, because we put this in session, because it is now being persistent, it doesn't matter where I go. I have access to that information. I have access to that information.
So because the first session didn't have the information or the IDs written out correctly is why I didn't post the information correctly. You would have, and then you had to redo the whole session over in order to save the information to post it correctly after you
Yeah. So,
fixed it.
so close. The session saved correctly. It would just saved it as a key. We can even scroll up. Let's see if it's there. Make this bigger. So, oh, I got all that errors. It saves it. Oh, it didn't save it. I didn't print it, but it saved it as fname here. So that was still in session as fname. I was calling it as first name here. And so I could either go and change this to fname, but we decided we wanted to be persistent with how we're calling different things. And so we decided to change it totally to first name. Right? But remember, this runs when a form is submitted. This is creating my session. So right now, so if I don't create something new, what's currently in session at new user was the one with fname. And so in order for it to now take over, I had to run it one more time because I changed what was in session. But now moving forward, if I were to, if I were to say, come back here, but I were to say /user, oops, not Josh. You can still see it still is keeping track of this information. I can go to about. I don't think anything's going to show up about. Yeah. And then go to user. And it still shows up. It's keeping track of Charlie until either I clear it out or I rewrite it.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Yeah, hit me.
So so I noticed that in one of the assignments it said that we had to do like an inline script, right? In
Which
the
assignment?
HTML. trying to think which one it was. I think it was Playground, if I'm not mistaken. It talked about having, was it this one? No, I don't think it was this one. Oh yeah, it was this one. It says that I had to have the internal style sheet or inline, right?
Mhm.
Just for this assignment. So then, like on the next assignments, you want to like it did show us about adding a new folder and adding it under style.
Mhm.
So that's the correct way we're gonna be doing it from now on, right? Having it in a folder,
Yeah,
individual.
so I'll just be blunt with you. You don't have to do any of this. Yes, if you were to do a static file and do CSS, yes, this is how you would do it, is you would you would create your static. You'd kind of follow this. You'd create your static folder. You'd create a style sheet. Within your static, you could have images or your JavaScript. None of that is needed for the exam. But if you're going to refer to it, this is how you refer to it. Yes, you could. Again, if you just bring in Bootstrap, that's all that you really have to do. And really, you don't even have to do that. You just have to, if you don't want to use Bootstrap, then yes, you'll need to bring in a static folder and do some CSS just for some minor stuff and tweaks with like inputs and colors. But it's not super front end heavy. Like I don't care about the front end really. Because that's not really the whole point of this is can you spin up a server? Can you get data in a database, obviously? Can you get data flowing from the front end to the server, to the database, back from the database to the server, to the front end, and visualize that? By just using Bootstrap, and if you have a form that looks like this, that's perfect for me. That's all that matters.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I know like some of the assignments it has like colors and all that, and I was just like trying to match it as close as possible.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no,
So,
it's yeah, when it gets to the exam, if you just have it like this, that's all I care about functionality. I don't care about because the other part of it too is, I've seen a lot of students who get really caught up on making it look really nice and the functionality is not there. Whereas like you're gonna have, you're not gonna typically have 24 hours to work on coloring and the reality too is you'll typically get like a UI UX design. Depends on what kind of firm, right? If you're at a big firm, you'll get a UI UX design or something you just need to emulate. They'll give you color palettes, they'll give you all that stuff you have to do. And so I'm not super worried about that for the exam. Like I don't care about CSS as long as it looks fine. If you didn't do
okay.
Bootstrap and it was like, let's say there was just one line of your form, that's pretty gross. Like do a little bit of styling in that case.
Got you.
But like it doesn't have to, most of them are just like the wireframes is just pretty bare bones. We care more about functionality. Can you take data from the front end, send it to a server, save it in a database, or can I retrieve information from my database and show it on my front end? That's what I care about.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you put a message box on your template?
Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see right here, there's just different types of
Oh,
this is
okay.
just a text area. It's not an input. Just a different type within a form. Like in the same way
Oh,
that there's like check boxes and radio buttons. It's just a
right.
message would be a text area.
It's been a really long time since I've done anything with the front end.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
This will be the extent of what you have to do for the front end, really.
All right.
Just dealing with forms, and then we'll get to a point in 2 weeks where we'll get some data and then we'll iterate through it on the front end. But it's not super difficult, not super hard. Maybe we'll do that next week. Because next week, really, all we're doing is kind of not a refresher of this, but we're going to build out kind of counter, maybe a little bit more in depth or maybe even a little bit more intense. Or we'll build out counter just to prepare you for Ninja Gold. But are there
Okay.
any questions on forms in session?
No, it
Mm.
kind of was a little bit like our HTML assignment, but just
Mhm.
with additional stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the real big things is you bring it in up here, you have a secret key. It could be anything you want. It could be pizza is life, it could be, unicorn, it doesn't matter. Um, you could just keep it as that. And then again, the big things, so that in order for us to work that and we bring it in, the big things to remember is when we're dealing with a form, methods post, or else you saw that, hey, it doesn't accept that kind. We can grab information like this. I would encourage you to create it into a new dictionary, and we'll talk when we deal with Flask plus MySQL why that's more important. But I would encourage you to do that. And then when we put it in session, all we do is create a new key of session, and then its new value. Its value can be anything, as we see. It can be a dictionary. And then the last thing is we never render template on a post. We just redirect.
I'm not, could you explain that really quick? I'm not really clear on that.
Yeah, so when we are submitting our form, I was
Right.
saying in the sense of, let's say you have like a checkout thing, you go on online shopping and you put in your credit
Right.
card information and you press a form. If we are able to render template, let's say we render template to whatever, if I refresh the way that this is set up, it will then run this method again,
Okay.
having all that information persistent. So if you refresh that page, it still is holding on to that. It's still holding on to that, credit card number, the amount that it's going to be for, et cetera, et cetera. And so then we can, are you sure you want to resubmit this? And if we press yes, it's going to send another. So, if somebody's resubmitting 5 times, that's going to be 5 different charges on their credit card. But in order for us to redirect, like if I were just to render template, cool, I could have access, if I were to run this on it,
Right.
I would be able to have access to that data. But once it leaves this route and this method, that data is gone, right? I can't do it anymore. That's where session comes in, is we want to make sure we're keeping our data local, meaning that we're not allowing it to kind of refresh or do anything like that, like double charging. But it also allows us to, so it allows us to redirect. And then by doing session, it allows us to access that information again.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to build a session in. So when they log in, this will be in weeks, like week 12 or 13. When they log in, we'll be able to basically say, okay, they're logged in, like user logged in is in session. That's true.
Okay.
And then as they're navigating, every route, if we're doing something, if we're creating something, maybe we want them to be logged in before they comment or before they do whatever. Then we can basically say, is user logged in? And if it's true, cool, then this is what we want it to do. And if it's not, we just send them back to the login and registration page. So that's how that's how sessions really going to be used in the future, is just to keep track of who is currently logged in and then are they logged in or not? And it helps protect our website. Any other questions, my friends?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Excuse me, Will.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you gonna upload it by tomorrow or tonight?
Yeah, I've tried to upload them all by 10 a.m. the next day. So except the ones that obviously I forgot. But I've been trying to be really diligent. So I'll make sure I upload it tonight. Are you needing it tonight, Jeffrey?
Maybe tomorrow can be fine.
Okay. Well, 10 a.m. my
Um,
time, so I'll do it tonight. I'll just stay real quick and do it.
okay.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
my
it.
pleasure.
It helps
Yeah,
a
of
lot
course.
because of the time difference for us.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So I'll make sure I do it tonight.
So I actually went over quite a bit of this during my second or my first retake.
Mhm.
And it's just a lot of it. I kind of lost. There's just so much to it. I just lost a lot of what I retained.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I have the first part of this down pretty well
Cool.
with the making dictionaries and lists and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's
So-
awesome. Practice, 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 practice. That will be what helps. And it's weird. It's a new muscle to kind of work out, you know. But continuing to practice will be super helpful.
Mhm.
So, okay, friends. Well, I will get that recording up, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night. I will see you on Thursday. Is there anything? Let me stop the recording real fast.